Leadership is a journey. Our guest today has been on that journey as an entrepreneur and business owner and helped countless others on that journey too. His specialty is CEOs, but his principles of high growth leadership success apply to all of us. And that's why I'm welcoming you to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to this podcast, you could be with us live for future episodes on your favorite social channel. You can get all the information about when those live episodes are happening. Therefore, interact with us sooner and get this information sooner by joining our Facebook or LinkedIn groups, just two of the places where these are simulcast. Go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn to find out when they're happening. Sign up for that group, join us, get the inside scoop, and know when episodes are coming. Today's episode is brought to you by my latest book, Flexible Leadership: Navigate Uncertainty and Lead with Confidence. It's time to realize that styles can get in our way and that following our strengths might not always be the best approach. In a world more complex and uncertain than ever, leaders need a new perspective and a set of tools to create great results for their organizations and team members. That's what Flexible Leadership provides you. Learn more and order your copy now at remarkablepodcast.com/flexible. And with that, we got that business out of the way. Let's bring in our guest. His name is Patrick Thean. He is an international speaker, CEO, coach, and serial entrepreneur whose mission is to help leaders build great companies and achieve their dreams. All those in favor, say aye. Patrick's journey began when he was named Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year in North Carolina after growing his first company to number 151 on the Inc. 500. Since then, he's been on a mission to share his wisdom with CEOs worldwide, guiding them through the complexities of leadership and high growth success. He's the best-selling author of Rhythm: How to Achieve Breakthrough Execution and Accelerate Growth, which led him to be on our show the first time. And now he's here to talk about his latest book, The Journey to CEO Success: 7 Practices for High Growth Leadership. His methods have been integrated into programs at EO/MIT and Cornell University, and his leadership tools have driven extraordinary success for many CEOs and organizations. And so, Patrick, welcome back.
Kevin, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'm grateful to come back.
Well, we tried to do this once. We had a little snafu. So some of you, if you're on the live stream, you may say, "I thought you guys did this." Well, we started, but we didn't finish. We're here, and we're excited to be doing it. So it's been a while. It's been over a year since you and I were together for Rhythm. And so I'm curious a little bit. And so we'll put a link to that episode in the show notes, everybody, because of course, if you're going to like this, and so you're going to want to get more Patrick. But I'm curious, tell us a little bit about the journey that leads specifically to this book, Patrick.
So, after I sold my first company, a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs came to me for help. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, so there were not, 20 some years ago, not a lot of tech firms here. And so with the success of Medisys, my first project and first company, a lot of folks came and asked me for help. And so for the last 24 years, I've been on a journey helping CEOs. And I would actually share with you that the first few years I did it more for fun, actually. And then I began to realize that this was actually my calling. Stephen Covey wrote a book called The 8th Habit, which is about finding your voice. And I think I've been very fortunate that I found my voice, which was to help CEOs not fail, but rather succeed and achieve their dreams. So this book is kind of dedicated to that. Now, I think you asked me earlier, what about all the other leaders, right? And all the stuff works for all the other leaders. I just have this burning passion in my heart to help CEOs, because that is a tough job. And that is actually a very high failure rate job. So for me, I've been on a mission to help these guys and gals find success in a very difficult job.
So the subtitle of the book is Practices for High Growth Leadership. And as you said, being a CEO is an extraordinarily difficult job. All leaders, that's true for. But my question is, what's in all this 24 years of
Yeah.
of observing and helping and coaching, what would you say is the biggest difference between the leaders that create what they're trying to create or move in a really significant positive direction and those who don't?
So, there's 7 practices, right? So in my book, anyway, there's 7 practices. And so the first couple are about yourself. The first couple is about, and I believe, by the way, that if you don't work on yourself, then you don't deserve to work on anybody else. So practice 1 and 2, right? Right. So practice number 1 is to be curious, and practice number 2 is to level up continuously, kind of like playing a video game. Once you get past stage 1, go to stage 2. The villains or monsters come at you faster. You gotta beat those guys and gals, and then you gotta get to the next level. And your reward, by the way, of getting to the next level is more stuff coming at you, harder, faster, greater speed, and in many ways, bigger results, which also means bigger chances for failure. So your reward is a better, faster, bigger game, and you keep going. And so if you forget to level up, or if you choose not to level up, you stop, and that's the best you can go. And you would then be if you're a CEO, you would then be the rev limiter on your company. This applies to all leaders. So if you're leading a team and you stop growing, you become the rev limiter on your team. So to me, those are the most important ones. Like, you've got to continue to level yourself up. Otherwise, you're not going to be a great leader for other people. But you got to be curious. I think that I'll tell you something. This year I hit 60, so I'm 60 years old now, and
Oh, you're so young,
I'm
Patrick.
so young.
I got 2 years
Thank
on
you.
you. So
I'm so young. Yeah. But what I've realized is that, when you have enough experience under your belt, you can actually make the mistake of using experience like a hammer. Like, hey, do this because I said so. Why, Patrick? Because I've done it 100 times. You've done it how many times? Twice. But that would be the wrong use of experience, using it as a hammer. More importantly is, how do you take your experience, enter a new opportunity, and be curious enough to use your experience in a way that brings the most value in that situation, right? So to do that, you got to have curiosity. I think if you don't have curiosity, your experience actually makes you a worse leader, because you come in slinging it like a hammer, like, I know better than you because I've done it more than you, etc., etc., etc. So
it's either a hammer or it's a mental block. Like we once we become expert,
yes,
we no longer are searching, right? So to be
that's right.
curious means we're continuing to search, which
That's
is
right.
what I like. It's so interesting that you say that. That's one thing I just wrote that down. Don't use experience as a hammer. I love the metaphor. So one of the things that has been floating around in my head a lot lately, which always worries my team about what's going to happen next. But the word that keeps rolling around in my head now is wisdom. And since we've now established that both of us are about the same age, I'm curious.
You're so young, Kevin.
Thank you. I mean, well, see, you're younger. So, but here's the thing. Here's my question. We talk about leveling up. We talk about being curious. You were talking about experience. From your perspective, how do we put wisdom into this equation?
So I think wisdom, if it's an equation, I think wisdom is you need a very healthy dose of curiosity, another healthy dose of humility, right? And by the way, this is a joke about the humble man. The humble man woke up one day and realized he was humble. He just lost it, right? So in other words, when you wake up and go, "Hey, I'm a humble guy," boom, you just became arrogant somehow, right? So so the humble man never wakes up and says, "I am a humble guy," right? Because the minute you do that, boom, you've lost
Look
it.
how humble I am,
Look
right?
how humble I am. Boom, you've lost it. Now you're arrogant. So really, you got to have a good dose of curiosity, a good drop of humility, and experience and wisdom. Experience is always a good thing, but you got to have that. But by the way, I get a lot of leaders who ask me, how do I be a better listener? And so for many years, I gave them the typical advice, active listening, make eye contact, put put your stupid cell phone down. Don't have another window up on your screen and stuff like
Those would
that.
be really good starting points, right?
Right. But then I realized that if you are curious and interested about something, I didn't have to teach you how to listen.
So
Right?
Patrick, I'll tell you a story. So we do lots of training, and sometimes clients will say, "Well, can you include some training on listening?" And say, "Well, we can talk about listening." I said, "I don't think anyone needs any training because everyone knows how to do it, and I can take you all through that." But here's the exercise that I often will do with people. I won't go into all the details, but people end up with a task to listen on a topic that they're not necessarily interested in, with someone
Yes.
who knows does care about that topic, and we just ask them to practice knowing how to listen because they know how, and here's what is almost always said: I ended up being way more interested in this topic than I thought I would be, simply because I decided I was going to listen, which means they became more curious.
Yes. You can intentionally choose to be curious. You can. Absolutely, you can.
And
Right.
because as human beings, we are learning beings.
Yes.
Once we're there, it's like we can't help ourselves but
Yes.
get interested, in my
But
experience.
if you think back to when you were a kid and you were in grade school, and you think about the teachers that you learned from, to me, the best teachers I had were the ones who kind of got me interested and got me curious. The ones who gave, and by the way, for those teachers, I didn't mind the homework. I didn't mind the homework at all. But for the other teachers where unfortunately I was in a subject that I wasn't interested in, I I really hated the homework. But here's the thing that made me realize that curiosity and interest is a key component to learning, is that over the grades I had different teachers for the same topics. Well, one year those topics were really interesting. Another year the topics were terrible, but they were the same topic. So really, the person who led the class, the teacher, was able to ignite my interest and curiosity, whereas the other teacher was not able to ignite my interest and curiosity. And I think the other component here is about caring. The teachers that got me going were ones that cared about me as a person, not just the topic, but about me as a person. So I think all those things add up to us being curious. So for me, I've got this thing that some people would say is rather selfish, but I will not take on a customer that I don't enjoy or don't feel like I could really love and care, because I found that it just made it easier. Like if I liked the customer, I just automatically cared for that person. And so for customers that I didn't enjoy, I've been in business long enough to know that I need to figure out how to care about that person. Otherwise, I'm not going to be genuine. Can't fake genuineness, right? So I try really hard, and but it takes a lot of energy for me. So over time, I began to decide that I'm only going to take on customers that I like, because it was so much easier for me to be interested in the person, to be curious about the person, to like the person, to care about the person. By the way, my co-author in my new book, Michael Prager, he's the CEO of Avid Exchange, which is a public company today. So I started working with Michael Prager, 24 years ago, helped him start Avid Exchange, and today it's a public company. He's the founder CEO of Avid Exchange. Very few companies that are public are being still led by
By
the
the founder.
founder.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so somebody asked me this question once. He said, wow, you've coached this guy for 24 years. How do you do that? I said, well, I go into every session of Michael uh, excited to learn about what he's going to teach me today that I don't yet know. That's kind of my mantra. I go, hey, in fact, I get to see Michael this Saturday. So I get to see Michael this Saturday, and I'm excited to go see him, and he's going to teach me something that I haven't learned yet. So that's
Okay.
how I stay interested in the person.
Everyone that's listening, I want you to note what Patrick just said. I get to see Michael. Not I have a meeting with Michael.
Yeah,
Not
get
I
to see
have to
him.
see Michael. Not Michael's on my calendar. I get to see Michael. And that small word says everything about it. So, Patrick, we need to move on because we got 7 practices. We are not going to get to all of them. Um,
Yes.
there's a couple that I mean, we could spend an entire show on each of them. Full alignment is one of them, but I think people have some clue about that. We might get to culture because that's just so overly important. But I want to talk about early warning systems. Two parts about this, and then I'll let you expand. One is thinking about finding early warning, and then there are systems to do it. Like we can have a practice or a process or a plan to give us some red flag, leading indicators, right?
Yes.
So talk about this and what this would look like for us as leaders.
So the first thing I would say is that everyone's solving different problems. So people come to me and sometimes they'll ask me for the best early warning system. And I'll say the best early warning system is based on whatever challenge you're facing right now. What are the leading indicators that will help you peek around the corner so you can identify the train before it smacks you on the side of your face? That's what you really want. So there's no best early warning system. I would say that the way the early warning system works is look, you got to figure out what is it that you really care about. It could be a problem, it could be a customer, it could be anything. And then you ask yourself the 5 whys, right? Like, why do I care about this? What could happen? And you just keep asking those questions until you identify something early in the pipeline of time that can be an early warning system for you. It's not complicated, but it is difficult. You know why? Because people have to slow down and think about it, Kevin. That's why.
Yeah.
So, right? Most people want me to just
Slow
give them an
down
early warning system. I'm like,
and
no,
think.
you gotta
Those are
think
two
and think.
problems.
Yeah, you got to think about it. You got to really think about what could mess up your world. Now, some of them are easy. Some of them are easy. I remember a meeting I had with one of my clients. The head of sales walked in. She was very happy. I said, "Why are you so happy today?" She said, "Because I already know I'm going to make my quota for the quarter." I said, "Really? Tell me how you know that." She said, "Well, it's because, when the last 2 stages of my pipeline is 200% of my quota, I'm going to get there. I know that already." So, right there, she shared with me what is her early warning system. She needs to get to 2x pipeline of her quota in the last few weeks of the quarter. It's not more complicated than that. And so she asked me, "Hey, can you build me an early warning system?" And I said, "Sure, I can. I can help you definitely with that." And I shared that thought with her. And she said, "Patrick, wow, you're a genius. How'd you figure that out?" I said, "You just told me that.
I listened to you.
You just told me that." So that's what I mean by most of us actually have the answer. We just don't slow down enough to think about it. And so usually it's something that we already know, but we have to slow down to think about it and go, what precedes A, precedes B, precedes C, and then boom, over here, that's the early warning system. Then the next thing you got to do is you got to quantify it. You got to be able to say, when this turns to this, whether it's a number or something that you can quantify. It doesn't have to be a number, but numbers are the best example. But you got to be able to quantify it, and then you know when something hits that incorrectly, it's an early warning system. Best example: one, I drive to the airport from my house in Charlotte, and I always cross the train tracks. Now, oftentimes, unfortunately the lights turn red, the barrier comes down, ding 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 ding, train coming, right? Obviously, I stop because I don't want to run into a train. But sometimes no train appears, and then ding, 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 the gates go up and we drive through. And we don't get mad. We don't go, "I can't believe this stupid thing stopped me and no train appeared." But what if a train did appear and I drove through? I get smashed. So the early warning system isn't perfect. And it's okay if the train didn't come. But it's not okay if the early warning system did not go off and you went across the train track and got smacked by a train.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Um,
And by
Another,
the way, the early warning system is something that a lot of people forget about. I'll tell you why they forget about it. Because we get too tunnel vision. We get so tunnel visioned into the goal that we don't see what's coming on the side. So it's your peripheral vision that needs to be adjusted so you can see
yeah,
that.
we get laser focused, and we would say, well, that's good. yes and, right?
Exactly.
Yes and, right? Laser focused, but still moving your. I could tell a story from growing up that wouldn't apply to anyone who wasn't a farm kid, but it's exactly what I'm thinking. Like, you got to know where you're going, but you got to keep moving your eyes. If you don't do that, you got a problem, right?
Yes. And that's when you see that early warning system that provides some of the peripheral vision. By the way, I'm sure you know the movie Jurassic Park. Did you see the movie Jurassic Park years ago?
I did not,
Oh my goodness. Okay.
as it
There's a,
turns out, but that's
there's,
okay.
there's a
Everyone
scene.
can judge me.
Nope, that's
You know,
okay. But there's a scene where the hunter is hunting these velociraptors.
yep.
And he's zeroing on his prey. He's about to shoot the velociraptor when the two other velociraptors appear by his side. So he was so zoned in on that one particular one, he forgot that there were three of them. He knew there were three of them, but he forgot about the other two. He was so zoned in, and the other one just let him target him until he was right there, and then the other two showed up, and of course he lost. So that's what happens when you don't have an early warning system,
That's
and
everybody.
you're
That's what you call
laser focused.
what you
Exactly.
call a spoiler alert. Okay, so um, we can't not talk about the fifth one, which is culture. And the question, I mean, it's one of the seven practices, and
Yes.
we've had lots of episodes on this podcast. It doesn't surprise you, Patrick, where we've talked about culture in one way or another. But the question I want to ask you here is, because you talk about it, and I agree with you, why is culture more important now than ever?
So a couple of thoughts about culture. The first is that the pendulum has swung back and forth between, and it's an employer's world to an employee world, swinging back right now to an employer's world to some degree, but it's never going to go back all the way up here. So therefore, most of us are always looking for great employees, and in this war for talent, you want to get the best talent trying to come to work for you, and then you want to get them to choose to stay. So lots of people ask me, Patrick, how do I keep my best employees? And I jokingly say, look, your best employees are not pets. You don't get to keep them. You get to allow them to choose to stay with you. So culture becomes a competitive advantage because what you want to do is you want to attract the right people and repel the wrong people. So people ask me, Patrick, what is the best culture to have? And that's the wrong question. It's not what's the best culture to have. It's the right question is what do you enjoy and love? And therefore, what are the kind of people you want to attract to work with? If you can do that, imagine if you could wake up every day working with a group of people that you love to work with. That'd be amazing. Most of us spend, I think the stat is 70% of our working hours, our waking hours at work. 70% of our waking hours spent at work. So you can choose to spend that 70% of your life with people you love or not. You do get a choice. And by the way, those folks also get a choice. So so that's why it's a competitive advantage. Not only is it financially good for the company to attract and have the employees choose to stay with you, that's a very good financial outcome. I think there's lots of things out there that show you it costs at least three times the salary of a person when you replace that person, right? So there's financial reasons for that, but there's this other reason that money can't buy called joy. Joy. Would you prefer to come to work, spend 70% of your waking hours with people that give you joy, or people that don't give you joy? Like for me, that's a competitive advantage.
So another one of the practices is people ecosystems. And as we've just been having this conversation, you've just been chatting, I'm sure people would see, well, that seems pretty close to culture. Just very quickly, the difference between what you would consider culture and what you would consider people ecosystems.
So culture is the environment you create. People ecosystem is the people you choose to hang out with. So that's the difference. And I think most people, when we talk about people ecosystem, mainly think about their employees. But the employees are really one part of an ecosystem. They're your customers, your partners, your suppliers, your investors, if you have investors, your shareholders, etc. So all those are part of your people ecosystem. In one of my companies, I had this investor that that gave me $20,000 invested in the company. And he asked me so many questions, took up so much time. I went to his home a few years, I think after the first year of his investment. And I said, buddy, I'm going to give you back your money. He said, what? I said, I'm sorry, man. You just asked me so many questions. I can't stand anymore. For $20,000, let me write you the check now. And he didn't realize that those questions were just driving me crazy. But I never told him. So the minute he realized that, he said, Patrick, keep the money. I'll stop asking my questions. So that was a good example. This is a smart guy, but he was in my people ecosystem.
He was all, in a way, he was trying to be curious, and yet a little too much, right?
Yeah, but for me, it was taking too much of my time, right? So what I wanted was really an investor in that particular situation for that amount of money to not bug me, really. And so I think who you put in your people ecosystem is so critical. And I would say that I learned a lot from the first venture group that invested in my first company. I learned so much from them. And when I talk to other entrepreneurs, I am just so grateful for how much I learned from this group of venture capitalists. In those days, we call them venture capitalists versus private equity. And I've got friends who've had horror stories of how they were cheated and things like that. But for me, I learned a lot. They treated me with such graciousness, and I helped them make money. They helped me make money. It was great. It's great.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point, even for all of you who are listening that might never meet a venture capitalist, and that isn't your goal. But I think all of us as leaders, it can be pretty lonely, and we need to have people in our circle, in our ecosystem, that we can trust, that we can learn from, that can give us the feedback that we need. That we can have joy with. We can go right on down the list, and I think that's a really important point. And I'm glad that we sort of came back to that before we finished. The seventh principle, or seventh practice, is the core customer. And again, I know we could talk about that, but I chose for us to pick a couple that I thought would be especially helpful. You need to know more about all seven, everybody. So you need to get a copy. Patrick and Michael's book, The Journey to CEO Success, 7 Practices for High Growth Leadership. Patrick, is there anything I didn't ask that you wish I would have?
Well, you covered a lot, man. You covered most of the book. I would say that thank you very much for inviting me on the show. And I would say that the core customer, that's something that's a little bit different from most people's discussion about the customer.
True.
I would say that I believe that you need to figure out the customer that you can best serve, that you can best grow with. And that is not all the customers you have. So I believe that once you figure out that core customer, that's the customer you build your products for, your services for, and all the other customers get to use the same products and services, but you create it, you design it for this core customer. So you got to get that right, because your strategy and everything should be built around that core customer, products, services, everything you do. If you get that right, business flows easily. You get that wrong, and you find yourself building products and services that just seem to be going against each other.
Being pulled in different directions all the time. Yeah. So I'm going to shift gears. A couple more things before we finish, Patrick. What do you do for fun?
For fun, I have 2 beautiful daughters and a beautiful wife. So I spend a lot of my time with them. In fact, I just came back from Japan with my wife and my younger daughter, Nicole, and had a great time. So right now, where I'm in my life is I'm spending a lot of time with my kids who are in their 20s.
That's awesome. And the only thing you knew I was going to ask you for sure is what are you reading these days, Patrick?
So I'll give you 2 books that I love. One is called The Surrender Experiment with Michael Singer. And it's about really letting go and getting to the flow of life and letting life lead you versus being so like driven. And for a driven guy like me, that's it's a good yin yang kind of a thinking. So The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, I love. And then another fun book I like is that I'm reading right now, actually, is Moonwalking with Einstein. The Art and Science of Remembering Everything. I just find that to be a fun book. So I try to do two things. I try to read like, a serious business book, and then I try and read fun books at the same time.
Moonwalking with Einstein. We'll have both of those books as well as both of Patrick's books in the show notes, so all of you can get access to those. Patrick, where do you want to point people if they want a copy of the new book? Where do you want to point people? How can they get connected with you? What do you want to tell them?
Yeah, well, just come to patrickthean.com and it will take you to my website, and you can buy this book on Amazon as well. So look forward to that.
Thean, Thean.com. Patrick, Thean.com. We'll have that in the show notes as well. And so before we go, everybody, I have a question that I ask you every week. If you've been here before, you probably know what's coming. And it's the most important question I could ask you today after you've just invested 30 minutes of your time with us. And that is, now what? What action will you take? Maybe, and we hope, that is to go buy a copy of Patrick's book. But that's not really what I mean. Maybe there's something that you heard Patrick say about being curious. Maybe it's something that we talked about listening. Maybe it's something about the core customer. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just that I want to help you move from that was interesting to here's what I'm going to do with that. Because I'm pretty confident the first is true, but the rest is on you. The answering the question of now what will I do with what I just learned is on your shoulders. It's your opportunity, and we hope that you will do that. Patrick, thanks for being here. It was worth the wait, my friend.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me.
And everybody, if you enjoyed this, you will enjoy next week, I promise, because every week there's another episode, another chance for us to join together to learn what it takes to move in the direction of becoming the leader we were born to be. Join us next week for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. We'll see you then.